One day, you realize something quietly painful. The people around you still hear your words, but they don't always hold them with care. Some listen to reply, some listen to compare, some listen to carry your story somewhere else. In old age, your voice becomes valuable, but your privacy becomes sacred, not because you have less to say, but because what you say carries weight now, and weight, when placed in the wrong hands, can break you instead of supporting you. Today, this is not about fear. This is about wisdom earned slowly, and the things that should travel with you into old age, untouched by other people's opinions. The first key point is the quiet weight of your regrets. The moments you replay when the room is silent and time feels slower than it used to. Regret is not a mistake you fail to erase. It is a signal that you cared deeply enough to reflect. But when spoken without care, regret stops being wisdom and starts becoming a story others tell about you. Not everyone listens to understand. Some listen to rank your choices. Some listen to feel better about their own. When you hand over your regrets too easily, you give people permission to sit in judgment over years they never lived, struggles they never carried, and decisions they never had to make with the same limits you faced. As you grow older, your regrets become more layered. They are no longer just about what went wrong, but about what could have unfolded differently if timing, health, courage, or support had arrived sooner. These reflections are intimate. They are shaped by context, pressure, and the version of you that existed at that time. When shared casually, others remove the context and keep the conclusion. They shrink a lifetime into a single sentence and forget that survival itself was often the victory. This is how regret, when misplaced, becomes a weapon turned against your own dignity. There is a difference between processing regret and broadcasting it. Processing is private, slow, and honest. Broadcasting invites noise. The wrong ears will rush to offer solutions that belong to the past or judgments that add no value now. Some will replay your regrets back to you later, slightly changed, missing the tenderness with which you first shared them. Others will quietly use your words as proof that they are doing better, thinking better, living better. None of this helps you grow. It only deepens the echo of what you already know. Regret, when held properly, has a purpose. It sharpens awareness. It teaches restraint. It humbles the ego and strengthens compassion. But this only happens when regret is treated like a teacher, not a confession booth for the world. You don't heal by reopening old doors for people who were never there when you needed shelter. You heal by sitting with the truth gently, allowing it to inform your present without dragging your spirit backward. Wisdom grows when regret is digested, not displayed. Many people think sharing regret makes them lighter. Sometimes it does, but in old age the stakes are different. Your words travel farther than you think. Once spoken, regret becomes fixed in other people's minds, frozen at its weakest moment. They may never see the growth that followed, the strength that emerged, or the quiet resilience that carried you forward. They will remember the crack, not the structure that still stands. And slowly, without meaning to, you begin to see yourself through their narrowed lens. There is also a subtle danger in repeating regret aloud too often. The mind starts to believe that the past is still active, still unfinished. You begin to speak as if you are still that version of yourself, rather than the person who learned, endured, and adapted. Silence in this case is not denial. It is respect for how far you have come. Some lessons deserve to live inside you, shaping your actions quietly, instead of being replayed until they lose their power to teach. Choosing not to share certain regrets is an act of self-respect. It is saying that your life is more than its hardest moments. It is protecting the fragile dignity that becomes more valuable with age, not less. You are allowed to keep parts of your journey private, not because you are ashamed, but because they are sacred. Regret does not ask to be exposed. It asks to be understood, forgiven, and then placed gently behind you as you continue walking forward. The second key point is your financial reality, the quiet arithmetic you do in your head when no one is watching, when numbers feel heavier than they used to and every decision carries more consequence. Money in old age is no longer about ambition or comparison. It is about stability, dignity, and freedom from unnecessary worry. Yet, the moment you speak your numbers aloud, the meaning shifts. What was once a personal balance becomes a public measurement, and people begin to place you on a scale you never agreed to stand on. Some will hear your situation and feel pity, even if you never asked for it. Others will hear it and feel entitled to advice, as if your years of living somehow missed what they discovered last week. A few will quietly adjust how much they respect you, how seriously they take your opinions, or how much space they allow you to occupy. None of this is said openly. It happens in subtle changes, in tone, in attention, in the way conversations shorten or shift when you enter the room. Money, once shared, becomes a story others tell themselves about you. If you have less, they see limitation. If you have more, they see opportunity for themselves. Either way, your humanity is reduced to a figure. Your wisdom, your experience, your insight are filtered through assumptions that have nothing to do with who you actually are. This is why silence around money is not dishonesty, it is clarity. It keeps the focus on your character instead of your capacity. There is also a quiet pressure that comes with revealing your financial state. When people know, they watch, they notice what you buy, what you refuse, what you hesitate over. Every choice becomes evidence for their conclusions. If you are careful, they call it fear. If you are generous, they call it foolish. You begin to feel observed instead of respected. What should feel like autonomy slowly turns into performance, and peace slips away without making a sound. In old age, financial privacy protects your inner calm. It allows you to make decisions based on what you truly need, not on how those decisions will be interpreted. It gives you the freedom to live within your means without explaining yourself, to say no without justifying it, to plan quietly without inviting opinions that only add noise. Your life becomes simpler when your finances are not open for discussion. There is a deep dignity in handling your resources without announcement. It teaches self-trust. It reminds you that your worth is not up for negotiation and does not fluctuate with your bank balance. When you stop explaining your financial reality, you stop apologizing for it. You reclaim the right to move at your own pace, to prioritize security over appearance, and to value peace over approval. This is not about hiding in shame. It is about choosing where your energy flows. Money is a tool, not an identity. When kept private, it serves you quietly, steadily, without interference. You are not required to make your life legible to everyone around you. Some things function best when they remain unseen, doing their work in the background, supporting you without becoming a topic for judgment or expectation. The third key point is your family conflicts, the quiet tensions that live beneath shared meals and familiar faces, the moments that never make it into photographs. Family disagreements are not simple arguments. They are histories layered with love, expectation, disappointment, and unspoken hope. When you speak about them to outsiders, you are not just sharing facts, you are handing over pieces of people who grew up inside your life. No one else knows the full story. No one else felt the early sacrifices, the long nights, or the silent efforts that shaped those relationships long before the conflict appeared. When family struggles are spoken aloud, they rarely travel intact. They are trimmed, reshaped, and interpreted through someone else's lens. A single sentence can turn into a permanent label. A moment of anger can become a character judgment. Outsiders do not carry the full timeline. They carry highlights and conclusions. And once those conclusions form, they are difficult to undo. You may move on, forgive, or heal, but the listener often stays frozen in the version of the story that felt most traumatic. In old age, family conflicts carry more weight because time feels different. What once felt like a temporary storm can now feel like a permanent scar if repeated too often. Sharing these struggles can keep the wound open longer than necessary. Each retelling brings back the emotion, the frustration, this sense of being misunderstood. Instead of releasing the pain, you rehearse it. Instead of gaining clarity, you deepen the groove of resentment, even when your heart wants peace. There is also the hidden cost of loyalty. When you speak about family conflicts, you are often asked to take sides, even when you never intended to. The listener nods, agrees, and quietly aligns against someone who is still part of your life. Later, when reconciliation happens, you are left managing the emotional residue you created. Others remember the hurt long after you have chosen healing. What was once a private process becomes a public imbalance you now have to carry. Family relationships are complex ecosystems. A small change in one part affects the whole. Outsiders tend to treat conflict like a puzzle with a clear solution. But families are not puzzles. They are living systems shaped by years of shared experience. Advice offered without context often does more harm than good. It simplifies what cannot be simplified and pressures you to resolve things in ways that may not fit your values or your reality. Protecting your family conflicts from public discussion is not denial, it is discernment. It allows you to work through issues at your own pace, guided by reflection instead of reaction. It gives space for growth without spectators. Silence, in this case, becomes a form of respect for yourself and for those involved. It acknowledges that some matters require patience, boundaries, and time rather than commentary. As you grow older, peace becomes more valuable than being right, and harmony becomes more important than being validated. Holding your family conflicts close does not mean you carry them alone forever. It means you choose carefully who is allowed to see the unfinished parts of your life. Some struggles are meant to be resolved quietly, with humility and grace, not dissected in conversations that can never hold their full truth. The fourth key point is your fears about the future. The thoughts that arrive quietly when the day slows down and there is nothing left to distract you. These fears don't shout the way they once did. They whisper, they ask questions you can't easily answer. What if I need help someday? What if I become a burden? What if my independence aids before my dignity is ready to let go? These are not dramatic fears, they are human ones, and they deserve careful handling, not careless exposure. As you grow older, fear changes its shape. It is no longer about chasing dreams or missing chances. It is about continuity, about whether life will still feel like yours tomorrow. When you speak these fears aloud to the wrong person, they are often brushed aside or softened with false certainty. You are told not to think that way, as if thought itself were the problem. But fear does not disappear because someone else is uncomfortable hearing it. It only retreats deeper, where it becomes heavier and more isolating. Some people respond to future fears with solutions you never asked for. They talk about plans, systems, arrangements, as if the heart works on a checklist. Others respond with silence, unsure how to sit with uncertainty. In both cases, your fear is left unattended. Not because it was wrong to feel it, but because not everyone knows how to hold something fragile without trying to fix or flee from it. When fears about the future are shared too freely, they can begin to define you in the eyes of others. You become the one who worries, the one who is anxious, the one who is fragile. This label forms quietly, and soon people speak to you differently, decide things for you, or withhold truth to protect you from what they think you can't handle. Your fear, once spoken, becomes a lens through which your strength is no longer clearly seen. There is also a subtle shift that happens inside you when you repeat your fears too often. The mind starts to treat them as predictions rather than possibilities. What was once a passing concern begins to feel inevitable. The future narrows, hope feels less practical. This is not because fear is powerful on its own, but because attention gives it structure, and structure gives it we. Silence, in this case, can loosen that weight and return fear to its rightful place as a signal, not a sentence. This does not mean you must carry your fears alone. It means you must be selective. There are rare people who can sit with your uncertainty without trying to reshape it. People who listen without shrinking you. People who understand that fear and wisdom can exist in the same breath. Your fears deserve that kind of presence, not the noise of opinions that were never meant to guide your life. Holding your future fears close is an act of inner leadership. It allows you to observe them, learn from them, and respond with intention rather than panic. It keeps your imagination from turning against you. The future will unfold in ways no one can fully predict, but how you carry yourself into it matters. When fear is treated with patience and respect, it sharpens awareness instead of stealing peace, and it quietly teaches you how to walk forward without surrendering your sense of self. The fifth key point is your past sacrifices. The things you gave up quietly so others could move forward without even knowing the cost. These sacrifices were not dramatic announcements. They were small choices made again and again. Moments where you stayed silent, waited longer, or settled for less because someone else needed more. Over time, these decisions became part of who you are, woven so deeply into your life that you almost forgot they were sacrifices at all. But when spoken aloud too freely, they lose their meaning and begin to sound like debts waiting to be collected. Sacrifice is delicate. When shared with the wrong people, it can turn into a weight placed on their shoulders, even if that was never your intention. Some hear it as blame, others hear it as expectation. A few hear it as a reminder of something they never asked for. The truth is, most sacrifices were choices made with love, not contracts signed for future recognition. But once you speak them aloud, people may start to feel watched by your past, measured against what you endured for them. There is also a quiet shift that happens inside you when you repeat your sacrifices too often. What began as love can slowly harden into resentment. You start keeping score without realizing it. Every unreturned gesture feels heavier. Every moment of being overlooked feels sharper. The heart that once gave freely begins to protect itself, not with boundaries but with bitterness. This is not because sacrifice was wrong, but because it was carried without rest. In old age, the urge to explain your sacrifices often comes from a need to be seen, to be acknowledged not as perfect, but as human. This need is understandable. Yet explanation does not always bring understanding. Some people nod politely and move on, never grasping the depth of what you are describing. Others reinterpret your story to fit their comfort, reducing years of quiet endurance into a simple phrase that does not reflect its weight. True sacrifice does not need witnesses to be real. Its proof lives in outcomes you may never fully see. In people who stand taller because you once bent, in paths that were smooth because you carried the rough parts yourself. Speaking of sacrifice can sometimes shrink its power, turning something sacred into a topic for discussion rather than a foundation for peace. Silence, in this case, preserves its dignity. When sacrifices remain unspoken, they continue to serve their original purpose. They remind you of your strength, your capacity to choose others without losing yourself. They teach you what matters and what does not. They become reference points for future decisions, guiding you toward balance instead of exhaustion. Kept private, sacrifice remains a source of wisdom rather than a RCE of conflict. As time moves forward, the most powerful thing about your sacrifices is not that others know about them, but that you know what they shaped in you. They shaped patience, they shaped perspective, they shaped the ability to love without applause. Letting them rest quietly allows you to release the need for recognition and reclaim the peace that comes from knowing you lived according to your values, even when no one was watching. The sixth key point is your health struggles in detail, the parts of your body story that don't need an audience to be real. As the years pass, the body speaks more often, sometimes softly, sometimes with urgency. A stiff morning, a slower recovery, a new ache that wasn't there before. These experiences are deeply personal, yet they are often the first things people feel expected to explain. When you describe every symptom, every test, every worry, your body slowly stops being yours and starts becoming a shared topic. Once health details are spoken out loud, they invite opinions. Not gentle listening, but confident conclusions. Everyone suddenly knows what you should try, what worked for someone they know, what you should stop doing, what you should have done years ago. The conversation shifts from care to commentary. Your lived experience gets crowded by other people's certainty. What you needed was understanding. What you received was noise. There is also a quiet transformation that happens when health struggles are discussed too openly. People begin to see you through the condition instead of beyond it. Conversations start with concern instead of curiosity. Invitations soften, expectations lower, not because you asked for that, but because others don't know how to hold complexity. They see the vulnerability and forget the strength that still exists alongside it. When you speak too much about your health, your identity can slowly narrow. You become the person with the issue, the diagnosis, the limitation. Even when you feel capable, even when your spirit is strong, the label lingers. Others may start making decisions on your behalf, assuming fragility where there is resilience. This subtle shift steals autonomy one small moment at a time. There is also an inner effect. Repeating health struggles aloud can train the mind to orbit around them. What you focus on grows louder. The body listens to the stories the mind keeps telling. This does not mean ignoring reality. It means choosing balance. When health becomes the dominant narrative, it overshadows joy, humor, curiosity, and purpose. Life becomes measured only by symptoms instead of meaning. Privacy around health is not secrecy, it is boundary. It allows you to seek help where it is useful and remain silent where it is not. It lets doctors do their work and friends do theirs without confusion. It keeps your healing process clean, free from unnecessarily emotional input that can complicate what is already delicate. Some parts of recovery require quiet, not conversation. As you grow older, respecting your body also means respecting its story. Not every chapter needs to be read aloud. Some are meant to be lived privately with patience and self-trust. When health struggles are shared selectively, they remain manageable. They do not define you. They coexist with your wisdom, your humor, your presence. And in that balance, the body is allowed to be imperfect without the soul feeling exposed. The seventh key point is your inner loneliness, the kind that does not announce itself and does not always look like emptiness from the outside. It can exist in a full room during a long conversation, even while laughter moves around you. This loneliness is not about the absence of people. It is about the absence of being truly seen. Over time, it settles, quietly, like a shadow that follows you without asking permission, reminding you that presence and connection are not the same thing. As the years pass, this loneliness changes shape. It is no longer the sharp ache of youth, desperate and loud. It becomes softer, heavier, more reflective. You start noticing how few people ask how you really are, and how many are satisfied with polite answers. When you speak about this loneliness openly, many people become uncomfortable. They rush to reassure you, invite you somewhere, or change the subject. Not because they don't care, but because they don't know how to sit with emotional depth without trying to escape it. Sharing inner loneliness with the wrong people can make it feel worse. Some respond with comparisons, telling you how busy they are or how everyone feels lonely sometimes. Others offer quick fixes, as if your inner world were a problem to be solved rather than an experience to be honored. In these moments, you realize that being heard is rarer than being surrounded. The loneliness deepens, not from silence, but from being misunderstood. There is also a subtle risk in naming loneliness too often. It can begin to shape your self-image. You start seeing yourself as someone lacking something essential, rather than someone navigating a natural phase of life. The mind quietly accepts the label and builds stories around it. You begin to expect distance, interpret neutral moments as rejection, and protect yourself by withdrawing even when connection is possible. Inner loneliness is not a flaw, it is a signal of awareness. It appears when you have lived enough to know the difference between noise and meaning. But it requires careful companionship. When held in the wrong environment, it turns into isolation. When held gently, it becomes a doorway to deeper self-understanding. Not everyone has earned the right to witness that deep or way. Keeping this loneliness private does not mean denying it. It means allowing it to teach you. It sharpens your ability to enjoy your own company without bitterness. It teaches you to listen more deeply, to value quality over quantity, to recognize connection when it appears instead of demanding it where it cannot exist. Silence gives loneliness space to transform rather than harden. As you grow older, you learn that some parts of the inner world are not meant to be shared widely. They are meant to be integrated. Your loneliness can become a quiet companion instead of a constant ache. It can sit beside you without defining you. When you stop asking the world to fill every empty space, you begin to discover how much presence you already carry within yourself. As life moves forward, it slowly teaches you a different kind of strength. Not the strength of proving, explaining, or defending yourself, but the strength of knowing what deserves your voice and what deserves your silence. With time, you realize that peace is not built by saying more. It is built by choosing better. Old age is not a closing chapter. It is a refinement, a narrowing of what truly matters, and a releasing of what no longer needs your energy. You stop carrying everything in your hands and begin carrying things in your heart, where they are safer, quieter, and more honest. You learn that not every truth needs an audience, and not every feeling needs to be processed out loud to be real. There is dignity in discretion. There is wisdom in restraint. When you protect your inner world, you are not isolating yourself from life, you are preserving the parts of you that allow life to still feel meaningful. You become less reactive, less exposed, less dependent on being understood by everyone. And in that space, something steady forms. This is not about closing yourself off. It is about opening yourself, trusting your judgment, honoring your experience, allowing your life to be shaped by intention instead of explanation. You have nothing left to prove and everything left to protect. Walk forward carrying fewer words but deeper ones. Let your presence speak where language is unnecessary. Let your silence guard what is precious. And let your remaining years be guided not by what you share with the world, but by what you choose to keep whole within yourself.